I'm a fellowship trained breast surgical oncologist, and I was just asked, what determines if you meet criteria to get an MRI, aka if you need to be followed by a breast surgical oncologist like myself in a high-risk breast clinic? Is it just lifetime risk of breast cancer over 20%? And the answer is yes. However, how you calculate that lifetime risk matters. This is one calculator that gets used a lot. It's called the Tyrer-Cuzick Risk Assessment Calculator, and you guys can find this online and enter in the data yourself. It's going to include things like how old you were when you got your first period, if you had any breast biopsies, how dense your breasts are, as well as all of the female relatives on both sides of the family down to your first cousins, and how many of them have actually been diagnosed with breast cancer or ovarian cancer and at what ages. This is another risk calculator. It's called the Gale model, and you can also find this online and enter in your information. It's not going to include all of your female relatives or what ages they were diagnosed, but it will include how many of your first-degree female relatives, such as your mother, your sisters, or your daughters, have been diagnosed with breast cancer. Typically, the first model, this one, the Tyrer-Cuzick, does actually overestimate risk a little bit. And the second model, the Gale model, may underestimate it. So a real assessment of your risk may be somewhere in between the two, which is why it's important to have that conversation with a breast specialist who can holistically assess. Sometimes mammography centers will have you fill out intake forms while you're waiting for your mammogram, and that will include some of this information. But one thing to keep in mind is that a lot of times when the Tyrer-Cuzick is calculated by the mammography program, it may not include all of your female relatives. And when all the female relatives are included, that risk often ends up being lower. So if you've received a report from your mammogram that says your lifetime risk is over 20%, or you've put your information into this Tyrer-Cuzick risk calculator or the Gale model risk calculator and your lifetime risk is more than 20%, I recommend you make an appointment with a high-risk breast clinic in your area. It could be run by someone like me, a breast surgical oncologist. It could be also run by a general surgeon who specializes in breast, or even an NP or a PA who has a lot of experience. They can kind of holistically assess what your risk is and help you determine whether or not an MRI would benefit you.